Welcome back. It's another track breakdown with me. I've had a release on Baikonur Recordings out of Russia, and the track's called Deeper Love. And I wanted to kind of go through it. It's got some different stuff. I made this probably, I don't know, almost close to a year ago now. And there's some cool stuff going on in it, and a little bit different than my last track that I did a breakdown for, which was Already Heard. So let's jump in and just kind of get a quick overview of what's going on. So we'll kind of come in when the bass hits here, or actually right before the first drop. So let's go here. So you get the point. Kind of a really dope, kind of darker tech house roller with a lot of influence from techno. And I think the one thing I want to start with is kind of this kick and low end bass relationship that's going on here. So I was referencing a track by Huxley. Shout out Huxley if you're watching. He had a track come out on Tool Room last year that had this. I remember I was out at Pattern Bar. Really great dance music institution here in downtown LA that hosts a lot of great parties, and a DJ there played this song that I'm talking about, and I just remember being so enamored by the low end. And when I kind of went back into the studio and started really dissecting what was going on, I was like, I want to try and emulate this, which brings me to another point that, referencing I think is a great way to get inspired. So if you're ever feeling less than inspired, try listening to the track, try and pick apart some production techniques, or try and pick out what it is that is making that record resonate with you, and see if you can kind of emulate that. So what I chose to emulate in that track was kind of this low end, and what I was kind of hearing was that there wasn't really much tonality going on. It was a lot of this kind of just very well mixed and like rhythmic low end. And so the way I accomplished that was by kind of pitching around different low end percussion elements. So if you start with the kick, it's got some great punch. It's got some nice top end, kind of my typical like layered kick sounds, a little bit of EQing, not a ton, some compression, maybe a little more EQing here. Yeah, just getting rid of some of the boomy low end. And then a little more, I do this a lot where I will kind of shape the drum at the end. But then these bass elements, there's not a ton of tonality. And now I think I did tune them so that they were in the same key of the song. But you could probably play any note over this and it would sound like it was in key. So these are all just different like percussion loops, really. A lot of like Tool Room stuff. Another Tool Room one. I think this is an actual bass line. And this is something from Waveform, which also makes really great sample packs. But together, there's nothing tonal about it. And I think that that's one thing, for this kind of a record, I wanted to make something that wasn't super musical. And I think that's why the vocal shines so much, is because the vocal and the stab in this record are really the only things that are very melodic. There's a bunch of like kind of one shots and things like that, but nothing in here is doing any crazy melodic information. So that's kind of one of my favorite parts of this record, and why I'm spending so much time talking about it is just I think I've accomplished what I was trying to emulate, which was this very like rolling techno style kind of unapologetic low end. And so on top of that, it's kind of fairly straightforward. Very kind of meaty clap. Various types of kind of industrial sounding percussion. That, to me, that tambourine gives a lot of character to this drum loop. I think all the sounds in here are also very like reminiscent of kind of like a late night underground warehouse party kind of vibe. It's very thick hat. And then there's this like low perk that kind of almost sounds like a stab. And then one thing I was taking, I think when I wrote this, I was doing the Tool Room Academy. So shout out those guys, Pete and Ben. And so this rack is something that Ben Remember loves to do, where it's just a ton of delay and reverb, and you kind of automate where it comes in. So you kind of hear it like right here. He's like, kind of gives it a little kind of swell almost. So that's really the drums. There's nothing major going on there. And then the stab is fairly straightforward too. Another Tool Room Mark Knight pack. I think a lot of my sound is just finding the right sounds. And I think I shaved off a good amount of the high end just to give it something really very, very mid-rangey, very warm. And then I try to use as much as the vocal as possible. So this is originally Deeper Love was recorded by Aretha Franklin. But the acapella I found had a kind of a different timbre. Aretha's got this very unique, soulful voice. Everyone recognizes it. This is an acapella from Seville and Cole. I think they were a songwriter group. And so they released this version. I found this acapella, didn't really know much about the history of the song when I found this, and then kind of went back and dived into it. But typically what I'll do is just try and use as much as I can. So there's a lot of different little vocals. A lot of delay to kind of give it that really kind of warehousey vibe. Kind of really pushing the mid-range on this to introduce the vocal, but also like one thing I don't do until you actually hear this main breakdown vocal come in is all these, like all of the high end is really chopped off these little cuts, except maybe that one, and doing a lot of that same automation with this tension rack again. So these are all from that same, or maybe this isn't, but all these are. Just trying to use as much as I can. And I think that when it's just really drums that stab, and then the acapella, and that is really what gives this record, I think, there's just a lot of space. There's a lot of room to highlight those elements. I'm not packing a ton in. But then once we get to this breakdown, there's a little bit of an acid line that I introduced. I think this was done in silence. Another little bass shot, and obviously your creepy tension string, on top of the vocal.
It gives me strength to make it through the day. Running love, running respect for yourself. And that's why I'm not looking for a deeper love, 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 a deeper love. Whoa, 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 whoa.
And that's pretty much it. I wrote this record pretty quick. I think that's why it resonated with Baikonur very, so much. Is because it was written really quick, and from one moment of inspiration. It's fairly simple. This is like, it's also, I think the rough mix is what I ended up using. I sent them the demo. They liked it. I didn't feel like it needed to be altered. The mix sounded great. So sent it over to their mastering people, and now it's out. And hopefully on your USB, on your phone, saved to your Spotify library. Hope I can have your support on that. So I want to thank you guys for sticking around. You've obviously, if you're still watching, you've invested a good amount of time into either what I'm doing or my music. But I want to take 1 second to ask for a little more of your investment. I would love to plug the Equal Justice Initiative. They are an organization fighting for social justice reform. They originally began by the lawyer Brian Stevenson, who represented death row inmates during a time where they weren't looked at as people worthy of representation. And so you saw 1 in 9, I think the stat that I saw in the movie that recently came out starring Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan as Brian Stevenson, 1 in 9 death row inmates are wrongfully convicted, which is a kind of scary statistic as far as putting people to death for crimes they've supposedly committed. Getting that wrong should never happen. And so the Equal Justice Initiative is committed to not only fighting for the rights of those on death row, but also who are disproportionately Black, African Americans, but also fighting for social justice reform in the criminal justice system. And right now, I think it's more important than ever to highlight the work they're doing and ask for your support in making a contribution or donation to them. So, but if you'd like to make a contribution, you can find all the information in my link in my profile, and I'm hoping to have your support there as well. So thanks for watching, and can't wait to make more of these. Every time I open up these old projects, I learn something new, and I hope you did too. So take care. Peace.